And we're live. Welcome back to the Loopcast. Today I'm joined by Josh and Erica. Happy Monday to everyone. And we start off the show here. We have a new Archbishop of Boston. So before we get into any of the heavy topics, congratulations. It looks like this is Bishop Richard Henning. Erica, this is your neck of the woods, right?
Yeah, this is my neck of the woods. So we're excited. Bishop Henning is coming up from Providence. He's only been there for 2 years as the bishop. And so he's headed up to Boston to replace Cardinal Sean O'Malley. Expect a cardinal hat if he doesn't make the wrong people angry in Rome rapidly for Henning one of these days. But yeah, it's a big C up here. And obviously Boston was the sort of ground zero of the sexual abuse crisis starting in 2000. And O'Malley has been at the helm of helping Catholics heal there and reforms up there. So Henning gets to kind of start, 24 years later, hopefully we've been able to do some healing. I'm saying this very awkwardly, but yeah, congratulations to Boston and well done, Sean O'Malley. I hope he has a great rest before he has his final rest. So
any thoughts, Josh?
Oh,
well, I certainly don't envy the.
All right, we got you super delayed. I don't know why, but just keep rolling, Josh.
Yeah, I obviously don't envy Cardinal O'Malley having to endure that tenure there in Boston. I think it was, just catching a lot of arrows, and he was right in the middle of, and on the receiving end of a lot of frustration, anger, hurt that were in many ways understandable. For past sins that the church had done. So, no one's perfect, but Cardinal O'Malley had to deal with a lot. And so he deserves our respect and certainly our prayers.
Amen. So we got a full show today. No two ways around it. We're going to try to sneak in a lot. So we're starting up top. If anyone's checked their stock portfolio, it's not doing super hot right now. That'd be the first major observation.
Putting it mildly,
not doing so hot. So we're going to get into what happened with kind of a global stock sell-off here. We're also going to talk a little Olympics. We have Scottie Scheffler winning a gold medal. My favorite genre of video, dudes crying during the American anthem. Can't get any better than that. We have some violence in UK, and that's a little bit of a complicated subject. Thankfully, we have Erica here to explain it to us. And a little veepstakes talk at the end. We have some new information with who Kamala Harris could potentially choose. But as always, best way to support the program, just subscribe. Leave a like on this episode. If you guys are live in the chat, leave a like for sure. I see tons of people packed in there. Thank you guys for joining with us. Love seeing all of you in the chat every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m. And if you're listening on podcasts, love you guys too. Leave us a review, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So let's get into it here. First up, no two ways around it, just a total stock meltdown. Some of the major reasoning. Okay, so we see Japanese stock exchange had the worst drop since the Black Monday drop on Wall Street. This is Japan's Nikkei 225, plunged 12%. Another reason, we have a really disappointing jobs report that came out. Non-farm payrolls only grew by just 114,000 in July. This is well below the revised 179,000 estimate in June and the Dow Jones estimate for 185,000. 185,000. Yep. Sorry, I just want to check my number on that. And then Bitcoin also down as well. So if you guys are crypto bros and you're trying to avoid all this, didn't go too well for you either. Yes, I lost a lot on crypto. 62,000 down to 52,000 for Bitcoin. One stock notably, and this, I want to see Josh's face for this. One stock did not go down. Josh, do you have any guesses on which stock did not drop? Man, we're really...
Yeah. Josh is swimming in the molasses
Josh,
today.
we can't hear you. This tank program. All right, Erica, what was your guess?
Well, at least we have Tom's camera. I'm going to go with, let's see. Well, I have the answer in front of me, but I would have guessed something in the military industrial complex, since probably not Boeing, since they're not doing very well. In fact, it was Lockheed Martin.
Lockheed
so there
is
we
killing.
go.
All right, I just got to show. Look at this graph on Lockheed. My goodness.
That is amazing.
I think it's like the only stock up right now. So this usually signifies that war is coming, right? There's no, this is not not good for the world, for Lockheed Martin stock to be as high as it is. And then we also get some really poor postings from Apple and Intel. So bad, in fact, that Intel's CEO is posting Bible quotes on Twitter which I feel like this plays like, you know, everyone has a friend when things aren't going super great in their life. All of a sudden they start posting Bible quotes. And so let your eyes look straight ahead, fix your gaze directly before you, give careful thought to the path for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Proverbs 4:25-26.
And it's like Old Testament Bible. This isn't like, you know, the kingdom's coming. This is Old Testament. Buckle up, gird your loins kind of thing. Very apocalypse now almost. I mean,
yeah. So Erica, surprises. Were you, I mean, it feels like everyone kind of got caught by this, but.
I think it's been interesting that the campaigns have been able to focus so much on the character. I feel like we've been watching the dangly show of sparkly things between the Trump assassination, which these are serious things. Don't get me wrong, but for anyone who's been paying attention to the economy, this is not a surprise. I'm a little surprised that the media is even covering it right now, because it does look really bad for Harris and for Biden-Harris, that whole legacy there. But no, I'm not terribly surprised. We covered in June when Biden was touting, this is before the disastrous debate, when Biden was touting the jobs report as like, oh my gosh, we added over 200,000 jobs. This is the greatest job bump. At the time, they had this number well over 200,000 that had been added. And we come to find out that over half of those jobs went to non-native born Americans. And you sort of thought, okay, what's going on there? They revised the number down, which is what you just alluded to. But if you dug even deeper into those numbers, and including the lower jobs numbers that we just saw over the weekend, so fully, I'm just going to read this. This is from the Heritage Foundation's analysis. Fully 1/3 of the jobs added in June were in the government. So we're talking like Soviet levels of employment composition. Why is this a problem, you might ask? Well, it takes multiple private sector jobs to support one government worker, right? So you have one government worker who is a non-producer. They're a paper pusher. You need multiple people working in various industries to support that one person's life. So a 2-to-1 ratio with government workers to non-government workers is unsustainable for any economic system. Then another number was if you add in jobs that were created by government grants. So say the Biden administration gives a grant to a hospital and they use that money to hire a nurse, you, the taxpayer, are still paying for that job as well. So you have the government workers that the taxpayers are paying for. You have jobs created by government grants, which you are also paying for. So 60% of the jobs that have been created in the month of June, that were created in the month of June, were paid for by the taxpayers who are putting into the system. So it's a very untenable jobs market, even if the numbers look artificially good on the first blush. So the fact that we're in a recession, not a huge shock.
And I have to say, politically, it can't be super advantageous for the Harris campaign, correct? Let's see if we hear Josh. No.
Oh, there's no Josh. Well, we had Tom's camera last week,
Josh,
and now we have Josh's
Josh, you got to type it
microphone.
out. You got to type it out in the chat. We need to. We could do a test for today's episode. We banish Josh to the chat, and we get his takes over text. And then I could read it out in a Josh voice. I could do my best impersonation. I mean, worst comes to worst.
The irony of this interplay, I just have to point out, because Josh would appreciate this, is that the best looking guy, his camera shuts off so you can't see him. And then the most articulate guy, his microphone shuts off so you can't hear him. And so it's just me left with my Trump shirt. Can I just do a quick shout out to the Trump shirt?
Oh, Catholics for Trump. Yeah.
Catholics for Trump. You can buy this at the Catholic Vote store. I was told to bump it today while Josh figures out his camera. So.
Well, I think I appreciate you're complimenting my appearance. I just gave up on the nice camera today, so I'm downgraded to a webcam because I'm not. I was like trying to describe to my mom. I saw my family over the weekend. She's like, "Do you like have someone that runs everything for you?" And I was like, "No, I do everything out of the office. I have a billion screens running, and so imagine." Oh, we should. Oh, someone's like, can he call you? Should we just have you call in and talk through my microphone? Oh, gosh. Yeah, Josh, we don't hear you at all, brother.
Yeah.
We might have to have you back out and then come back in.
Welcome to the chat.
Yeah, welcome to the chat. Now, I kind of like banish to the chat, or like you can call in like old shock jock radio style. Like we do listener call in. It just happens to be one of the co-hosts. There he goes.
That'd be pretty fun.
All right. So, we can all feel Josh's absence together. This is probably fun for the chat. This is going to be horrible for the audio listeners. We might need to cut this part. This is going to make no sense. Oh, wait.
I hear something.
We hear Josh.
Hello.
Whoa, he's here.
Josh.
You can hear me.
And it's kind of synced up too. Not going to lie.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a heart for someone left a heart for you coming back in.
Someone's loving, in the chat.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Josh.
Hey. Welcome to the show.
Politically, a recession on this level for the Harris campaign can't be good.
No, I mean, it can't be. I mean, the whole point that they've been trying to say is that Biden, Harris administration got us all back on track after COVID, and the inflation is not so good, but man, jobs are great. Well, this just burst that bubble with this horrible jobs report. Like, okay, no, actually, jobs are not good, and in fact, the fact that they are so poor, the jobs report is exactly what has sort of set this chain reaction, where the stock market dropped a lot on Friday, and then the Asian markets dropped, Sunday night, our Sunday night, their Monday. I was just looking at this before we're going to bed. I was like, dang, I remember this, bro. This is like 2008 when,
don't love that.
John McCain was hoping that the economy would still be okay, and then the stock market just totally tanks, and Barack Obama wins.
Yeah, not exaggerating. That period of time, like half of my friends' parents got divorced. Was like that 2008 period.
Great recession.
Yeah, Great Recession. Like the financial stress that they put on everyone was crazy.
You and I were both living in Michigan at that time, 2008.
It's horrible.
And there's the expression: if America, sneezes, Europe has a cold, right?
Yeah.
And so if the economy, we get a little tripped up, it hurts other countries much worse, right? But it's also the case that if the United States sneezes, Michigan gets a cold, because Michigan, with had the auto industry. Like if the economy starts taking a dip, it's, you start to think to yourself, where can I cut corners? Where can I save money? Maybe you don't buy that new car now, you push it off a couple of years. And so when the economy takes a dip, it's manufacturing, like, again, the automotive industry in Michigan, they're going to feel the hit. So this is bad news for Kamala Harris, but again, we think this is only the logical conclusion of, we were pretty much on the way out of the COVID recession, but they're like, no, we want to push through another spending bill because we want to try to win the Senate race out of Georgia. And so that's what they did. And we got runaway inflation. And so the two things that have hurt the economy right now has been exasperation of the inflation that the Biden-Harris administration have done to us, number one. And then they've just hounded this economy with just a spider web of regulations. That was like one of the things that I'm very happy that Donald Trump has mentioned during his first administration, that yes, he cut taxes, and he did cut taxes for middle-class people. Don't let them lie to you. It wasn't just that he doubled the per-child tax credit. He actually lowered marginal rates. So everyone paid lower taxes, including the working poor, lower middle class. They all paid less taxes. And the Democrats love to lie about that. But Trump cut taxes. But the other thing I've been very happy that he's talked about when he talks about the economy and why his first term was so good is that he did a lot of regulation cuts too. And so tax cuts and regulation cuts. He went through a lot of these regulations and just got rid of a bunch of garbage that was not helpful. And that was sort of like the hidden reason why the economy went on a jumbo jet trajectory during the Trump administration. Now, just imagine, we can second guess the wisdom of closing down our entire economy over COVID. I think that was a mistake.
I'm happy to. That was a total mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine, though, if we had done that with a shaky economy like we have right now. It was only because Trump had created such a massive economy that we could even do that without like knocking ourselves out. Now, again, I don't think it was a good idea anyway. But you look at this information, and like when I see the stock market fall, just hemorrhaging left and right and dropping, what did it drop? Like 700 points on Friday. It's already down like about 900
It's down 1,000 points, dude. The DJ's down 1,000. It's the most it ever has in a period of time. Yeah.
And I feel like, you know what? Good in a sense, because the fact of the matter is the Biden-Harris economic policies are disastrous for the economy, and I want voters to realize the consequences of it now and not 3 months after the election, because what they're doing to this economy is dangerous. They are spending money way too recklessly, and they're hampering us with too many regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time to, change ways.
Absolutely.
I actually have a microphone. I'm going to say it.
Welcome back to the show, Josh. Glad to have you. I do have something on the inflation front for sure. But before I even get into that, I did see that Trump apparently has been talking to Elon about creating a government efficiency committee to specifically go and destroy all these regulations as someone who has built massively successful businesses. And I actually thought that was kind of a cool, innovative approach to the second problem that you had, that there's just way too much regulation at this point in time. Like, why not go talk to someone that actually experiences the problems with those to potentially collaborate with business leaders to knock that off? Go ahead, Erica.
Sorry. And someone who took Twitter, fired 80% of the employees, hired back not even a third of that, and exploded the business. It's like, he has the experience. So absolutely.
Yeah, of course, that with Twitter, what he did there just showed that if I fired the entire DEI segment of this company, I wonder if, I'm saving a ton of money and we're just as efficient.
But another thing that people missed on that was that he fired so many middle managers. Anyone that wasn't directly involved with production, on the ground level at a product, he just got rid of. And shocker, the business continued. We live in our country.
Everything our bureaucracy is middle managers.
Exactly. We are ruled by middle managers, people that don't have anything to do with product. I mean, we got Pete Buttigieg.
That reminds me again of the conversation we had just a few weeks ago about how it would be nice if these federal agencies were actually dispersed amongst the states. Put the Department of Transportation in Pennsylvania. Put the Department of Commerce in New Jersey. And here's the thing. I remember I was talking to this guy when I used to live in DC about this 25 years ago. And this guy, I'm like, oh, where do you work? He goes, oh, I work for the Department of Interior. I'm like, oh, I just started laughing. I'm like, really? I go, this is hilarious. You work for an agency that, tends to the sacred lands we have out west. And you live here in the Washington, the swamp.
Yeah, why would you even want to do that?
And he's like, why would you want to?
But if we let the people of Montana and Colorado run roughshod over their own land, they might do something wrong with it. I'm like, do you even hear yourself? You sound like King George. What the hell is wrong with you?
Those are all the best, most dependable, hardworking people in the country.
Why would the ranchers and farmers in Wyoming destroy their own land? Are you an idiot? Do you think they have no children? This is the dumbest thing I have ever heard of. I'm like, this guy didn't touch grass. He jumped on on a metal aluminum box that shuttled him to and from work.
So Josh, on this point,
I think we can laugh about it, but it speaks to those competing visions of what America is that we see in stark contrast between JD Vance and the Biden-Harris camp, right? Because
I got thoughts on JD.
Biden-Harris, whenever they speak about America and what makes America great, you hear things like it's an idea. America is a thought. America is, and Harris's favorite, America is a wonderful dream. I guess it lives in the cloud.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
Yeah, it's unburdened by what has been. But it's very abstract. It's anything they can want it to be. So yeah, you can run America from the swamp of DC, from your little elitist cocktail clubs and that you go to every night. I don't know. You can run it like that. But when you look at a JD Vance or a populist vision of America, it's a place. It's a physical place. It's a homeland where your ancestors, their blood, sweat, and tears went into it. And it's a place to defend and to live in and to protect for your children and posterity. And that's the stark contrast that we're seeing here in this conversation, right?
Erica, you're just warming my heart. But so I have to bring this up. Now, first off, shout out to my dad. I talk about my parents a lot because I love them. They're phenomenal. I was hanging out with them over the weekend.
Love you.
And so,
you know what, Tom? I love your parents too.
They're the best. Mm-hmm. They're the best. And so my dad, he's in the finance world. So he sent me this email from someone who is not right wing. This is not from the Daily Wire or some type of right wing publication. This guy is CEO of MarketWise. His name's Porter Stansberry. And he wrote this really interesting email. And the crux of it was, is Biden America's Nero? So for all those people that get the question, when's the last time you thought about the Roman Empire? Josh, we've talked about this often. Here you go. Here's your little Roman Empire bit. But I want to read this because so many of the points we just talked about were covered here, but he offers some interesting solutions. So the email I'm going to read, paraphrase it a little bit. Was Biden America's Nero? Nero was a besotted, doddering, corrupt, avaricious, and immoral fool. And like Nero, Biden's Inflation Reduction Act dramatically accelerated the destruction of our empire. This has all happened before. Under Nero, the aureus coin was reduced from 8.0 to 7.2 grams of gold, while the denarius silver coin was similarly debased from 3.9 to 3.41 grams of silver. As should be obvious to even the most casual observer of history or economics, devaluing the currency reduces real wages, reduces the burden of government debt, and provides still more money for additional government spending, which leads to still more inflation. It also sets in motion a highly destructive, reflexive, and self-reinforcing cycle of popular anger, price controls, and further debasement. It is pathetic that anyone at the Federal Reserve continues to espouse any surprise at the cause of inflation. It was never a mystery. As Rome continued to debase its coins, its society, which once dominated the known world, began to fall apart. And then he goes into the different emperors, Caracalla, further inflated, Diocletian, further inflation. Diocletian simply started over with the solidus, which was only 4.5 grams. Rome hit rock bottom. But there was hope. A year after after Diocletian abdicated, Constantine the Great took power, Christian emperor. He was notably the first Christian emperor, and beginning in 312 AD, he began minting huge quantities of the solidus without debasing it further. He also, quote, drained the swamp by moving the capital of the empire to Constantinople. Rome would soon collapse as its bankrupt emperors could no longer pay for the mercenaries needed to protect it from Germanic tribes. Meanwhile, Constantinople continued to flourish another 600 years. So, how might this happen here? Imagine if our next president decided to adopt gold or Bitcoin as America's reserve currency, making it legal tender while mandating banks back their deposits with it. Imagine if they, quote, drain the swamp permanently by moving the federal seat of power from D.C. Imagine if they demanded a balanced budget, started immediately, and based government expenditures on a percentage of the economy that we can afford, like 10%. Imagine if our next president demanded the return of all U.S. troops and shut down every foreign military base. And imagine if, instead of taxing foreign trade, if they eliminated all barriers to trade. If those things happen, America will become an even greater nation, and like Constantinople, we will see hundreds of years of additional prosperity and wealth like we cannot imagine today. Will these things happen? No way. What will happen instead? More government debt, more inflation, more barriers to trade, more war, more poverty, and eventually a complete collapse of our society.
All right, now Pogo.
Yeah.
You always touch on something I like to talk about, fantasy world. If you had to move the U.S. Capitol to somewhere else, where would you go?
Oh, man. So it sounds like you have an immediate thought on that.
Oh, I have an answer.
Oh.
Would it be Indianapolis?
Indianapolis?
I say Minot, North Dakota.
Why is that?
Look, it's a small town, but it's got a lot of nuclear weapons, and it is the temperatures in Minot, North Dakota are pretty much extreme. So in the winter, it's miserably cold, and in the summer, it's super, super, super hot. There's only like maybe 2 months of the year where it's like nice weather, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why not put the capital there? No one's going to want to be there.
True. It's not going to be like for fair weather people. It's going to be for the real ones.
Hey,
and
man,
also,
you got to be a tough Viking to handle the weather,
Wouldn't you say that'd be like safer technically too? Like DC, someone did mention in the chat, DC once upon a time was the middle of the country. I feel like
it was miserable to live in Washington, D.C. That's why they put the capital there. It was a hot swamp, but then we invented air conditioning, so it made it livable. So that's why we got to go somewhere cold.
That darn American innovation. Gosh. Brought that to the Olympics.
The founders thought like I do, okay? That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Erica, did you have strong thoughts on where?
Yeah, I mean, I like the analogy. I think that a lot of people draw the analogy between the decline and fall of Rome and where we're at as a country right now. I think that some of the history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. I think where the rhyming breaks down in that analogy is with the solution from Constantine. Since we're living in a fantasy world, the reason it would be a fantasy is because the structure of the American experiment, the American government, is so vastly different from what Nero was looking at. But I think that it is important to look at the fall of previous empires and to draw those analogies to understand why things seem to be falling apart now.
Yeah,
And
maybe stop spending money like crazy.
maybe
Maybe we
stop
should
spending.
encourage people to have more children. What a concept.
Right.
So
right.
Maybe less decadence would be a good idea. I don't know. What do you think? Hello.
The part of and the historical stuff was just interesting. Erica, you know much more about that than I do. But the fact that he zeroed in on the Inflation Reduction Act as kind of the start of the acceleration, I think is correct. Because essentially we talked about earlier, like, was shutting down the economy and the entire country indefinitely a good idea? No, it's probably one of the worst ideas ever. And then to solve a problem that the government created, the government just printed out more money and just handed it out, literally.
Yeah.
Here's a check, the amount of fraud that came with that. We're talking about trillions of dollars of spending. Now, basic understanding of economics, that's how it's not mind-blowing how you get inflation. Like, that's exactly how you get inflation. So to solve a problem that they created, they screwed over the future generations of the country by inflating a dollar, giving them less buying power, and then putting them in a horrible situation. As we see, we got a recession coming. I mean, there's no question what's following right now.
Yeah, we're obviously already in it is the point. That was what I was saying at the last podcast with the index, the SOM index, the SOM rule. But here's the thing. I think it would be politically expedient, actually, for Donald Trump to come out and say, I want to lower income taxes, but and offset it by, like, let's say, actually increasing capital gains taxes or something like that. Because in other words, you have a situation where there were a lot of people in this economy that could just move their assets into something that keep them safe and hedge against inflation. There's a lot of people in the upper middle class or rich that were able to do that. And I don't fault them for doing it. They're playing by the rules. But a lot of us who rely on their income as the source of how to pay for their items in their family are feeling the pinch. So I feel like we should lower taxes on those people. And, again, maybe you don't have to increase the capital gains taxes, but I wouldn't be surprised. And frankly, go after people. I'd love to go after the universities. I would love to have that tax on endowments. I would just.
Yeah. And I was just talking to my grandpa about, he's like, oh, what do you think about loan forgiveness? Because praise be to God, I just paid off my college loans, and I had
congratulations.
Thank you. Still working on my wife's, but for me personally, just paid them off. And I thought about, oh my gosh, all the way back to me working summer jobs when I was 16, like taking jobs in college, being an RA, working after college, picking up side hustles, that kind of thing. Like, a lot of work went into paying this off. And he's like, well, what do you think about that? And I'm like, it would honestly be probably the biggest, most unfair travesty of my lifetime to just wipe out people's college loans when you have people that have worked their butts off, played by the rules, quote unquote, and then just gotten screwed over to benefit people that are not actually working towards producing real things in the country. We're talking about PhDs. We're talking about people with useless degrees. So that bothers me. And then it got into the broader conversation about inflation. Like, I think what's cool about, not cool, because obviously no one likes a recession, but to see this happening now, it's gone beyond the JD Vance's weird discourse into something much more at the core of what people care about. And for me, if I live in a country that I can't afford things that I need to build my family, to serve my family, like, I can't buy a house. I'm not going to be able to buy a house for years. And I'm blessed with a great job, but imagining people not blessed with a great job, not in the best situation, that is a total pipe dream for many people right now. And so to see the economy show these numbers and go beyond the JD Vance's weird stuff, it just makes it look really empty, weird, propaganda machine hollow, because you see much bigger problems happening for people my age. Inflation is maybe one of my biggest priorities. I'm pro-life. So abortion is number one. That's inherent evil. Number two is inflation. It's the future. And we are ruled by childless cat ladies, number one, and people that are geriatric who have no stake in the future of this country. Like, what appeals to me about JD Vance? He has a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. He is me. He's 39. He has to worry about the future. He still has to worry about the future for himself, not just for his kids. He's young. You think these 80-year-olds, they care about what they're doing in the country? So they're just financing these foreign wars that we shouldn't even be involved in at the level that you're at.
Actually, when you think about it, like, Joe Biden's recent proposal on having term limits for the Supreme Court. It's like, as I've said many times, dude, maybe we should have age limits on the people who hold federal office. People who are in the White House, the Senate, and the House. Maybe, maybe you should tap out when you're 70. I said 80 before, but maybe it should be 70.
Look,
I mean, the founding fathers, Ben Franklin was the only old guy. Most of these other guys were in their 20s.
Young.
Right.
And
People just didn't live as long. That was part of the thing.
And I'll be the first to say that Trump was just as bad on spending. Not as bad as Biden, because we get the Inflation Reduction Act.
Bad.
He was bad
He
on
was
spending.
bad.
And Reagan was bad on spending. Like Clinton was bad on spending. Actually, Clinton had the balanced budget. But anyway,
He was bad on spending. It was only because the revenues went so high, because the baby boomers were in their high income earning years, and because we juiced it with free crappy trade with China.
Thank you. So I'm saying if Trump, if he wins, wants to do a service to the future of the country, he should take some of the things in mind, because he did create a great economy, which I appreciate. But if you're doing that at the same time as spending at an irresponsible level, you're not setting up the future very well. So I would love to see that taken on seriously. I don't know if we'll ever see it. But yeah, we looked at the show. There's some heavy topics today. I wanted to get into some fun ones. So I have my favorite genre video. It is America dominating and then Americans crying during the national anthem. So Scottie Scheffler over the weekend won this country a gold medal, dominant performance at the Olympics, got a big time choke job from John Rahm. For people who don't care about golf, I'm going to end it there. But here, this is America right here. I'm going to play it. I'm just going to play it without music because it's just the anthem. But I mean, look at this guy.
Aw.
Here we go. Here it is. He's
Grown
singing.
man crying. Check.
He's also like the nicest guy ever.
Oh, baby.
Is this not the
All
cutest
right,
thing I've
you
ever,
got
you've
me.
ever seen? This
Yeah,
is
I mean,
America.
I don't really watch golf, but you give me a wife and a baby and you're like
Come
crying.
on
That's
now.
awesome. I love it.
So
That's what
awesome.
it's all about.
I was saying, and I also saw that we were on a historic run for for Scottie Scheffler, because we covered it in the podcast, but he got arrested this year. So I saw like a rundown. Scottie's 2024, second players, second masters, 7 wins, world number 1, first child, $30 million, jail, gold.
What a year.
White Boy
What a
Summer
year.
has been off the charts. I'm going to tell my children about White Boy Summer 2024. And then another part on Scottie on golf was they do all the kind of kitschy like stuff for the Olympics, and they had like first day at the Olympics, like which Olympics is this? And they had like Rory McIlroy, people from other countries. They're like first Olympics, third Olympics, whatever. And they said, "What's your goal?" And every other golfer had gold medal, right? I mean, why else we're here? We're here to win a gold medal. On Scottie Scheffler's board, have fun.
Oh,
It's like
that's perfect.
you're losing
Isn't
to a
that
guy
perfect?
by 6 strokes who said his goal was to have fun. I mean, how do you hate this guy? So that's a fun piece. Another piece that I found that I would like to share with everyone. So there was kind of a dream run by someone in ping pong. Now, first off, I watched the most random Olympic events, total electric factory, but we have ping pong here. Now, look at this shot. Basically, this guy doesn't expect to be there, and he hits this. Comes the other side of the table. This guy just shocked. The guy from China is like, "This is me playing my brothers in the basement, but on the world stage." This guy just has no
my
idea.
kids went down in the basement this weekend and put up the ping pong table again. They were like, "Okay, we got to do this." It's great.
Look at that.
It's inspirational.
Eric, you said you had a weekend story you wanted to share with the podcast. What was going on last weekend?
I don't. We did not watch a lot of Olympics this weekend. So my husband's out of town. I'm home. I'm single momming for 10 days with 7 kids. Fortunately,
You should get an Olympic
Easy.
medal.
yeah, no problem. Like we're good. And so we had a massive tropical storm come through on Saturday night.
In Connecticut?
We lose power. Yeah, in Connecticut. I mean, massive for Connecticut. So I'm sorry to anyone who is on this call from Florida, the Carolinas. I am speaking as a Connecticutian here, but we had the storm come through. We lose the power, and the big, like trying to get the generator hooked up, which only powers a part of the house. And like a neighbor comes over with lanterns because I had no flashlights apparently that worked or batteries. I was completely unprepared and ashamed of myself. So after like 2 hours of getting all this stuff, the lights come back on at 9 p.m., of course. But in the process of this massive power surge, they blew our well pump. So I wake up the next morning and I'm like running the laundry, running the washing. Yeah. So I ended up being home. Fortunately, the older kids took all the little kids to mass while I worked with the well guy. And I just felt like such a boss mom though afterwards.
Yes.
So I was like, I did it, like power to the woman.
We need a new chapter of the mommy blog for that one.
That's right. You know, if I was still a mommy blogger, I would blog that so hard.
Oh my gosh, that's such a nightmare. Oh.
It was exciting. There was a lot of prayer and a lot of prayer answered. We'll just put it that way.
And then, final uplifting story before we have to get into more sad stuff. We have Olympic sprinter, first Olympic sprinter since in 20 years to win the 100 meter from America. Now, take a look at this line here. This guy here won. This guy here came in second place.
He thought he won.
He beat him by, 0.005 of a second is the difference between being the fastest man in the world and not the fastest man in the world.
Second, well put.
Crazy.
You know what Nixon said about the Olympics?
What?
In second place, you get a silver medal. In politics, you're a loser.
Well, second place is first loser. That's growing up in a family of boys. That's just as it was known. So, okay. We're going to get now into some of the violence going on in the UK. Now, very interesting situation. I want to lay down a little bit of the baseline for what we've seen. There's a lot more context to this, so keep this in mind. So what we're looking at right now in the UK, Southport, England, we have a 17-year-old stabbed a Taylor Swift dancing class of young girls, ages 5 to 9, 3 of them fatally. Now, that's not even, I think there was like 10 others that injured. 2 of the teachers were injured. Just a unbelievable tragedy to befall that community. It's hard to even wrap your mind around. It'd be like our equivalent of like a mass shooting, basically. And they've had a major violence problem in the UK. They have stabbing problems. Obviously, they don't have guns over there. And so in 2023, knife stabbings rose 22% in London, 5% nationally in the UK. And so we get from Friday to now, we have national riots, uprising from both sides. The media right now is coining this as far right riots. And a lot of people are saying the stabbing is kind of the powder keg. Now, I want to reach over to Erica here. Your head was in this for a while. You said there's a lot more context of this than what is really meeting the media right now. What is going on in the UK?
Yeah, so the UK media is failing to put this into the context. And the context, of course, is this massive migration. It's really interesting. When I was trying to find stats on what went down with the stabbings and the rates of stabbings, who's doing the stabbings, it's really hard to find unless you go to alternative media sources from inside England. Lawrence Fox, some of you might be familiar with him. He's a British actor, and he's part of this sort of Resist UK movement, kind of a populist uprising, but they have some stats. And most of these stabbings are coming from either second generation or first generation migrants who are non-EU citizens. So we're talking about massive migration from North Africa and from the Middle East. And most of these killers are shouting Allahu Akbar, which of course is the Islamic sort of jihad shout that you hear. So net migration, these numbers are staggering. And you remember
I'm just so shocked by this, though, Eric. I thought diversity was our strength.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry, Josh, to break that bubble for you, but here we go.
Here we go.
So in 2023, net migration for the UK was 685,000. And this is, illegals coming, and their population is only 67 million. So when you put those two side by side, you think of it's an even greater pressure that's being brought to bear on their society than even we're seeing here with our Biden-Harris border crisis that we're suffering. The response from the British Prime Minister, the new guy, we covered their elections. So we have this far left dude who is now head of the government, Keir Starmer. His message was, we will not tolerate this. This is far right extremism. Does that sound familiar to anyone in America? We are going to bring the full force of the law if you've participated in this, both in person and if you've participated in this online. Because
their hate laws are different.
Yeah. So they're saying there are going to be indictments, there will be charges, there will be convictions. And again, the two-tier justice system, I don't know if we can pull up this video, Pogo, but we have a side-by-side of Keir Starmer speaking about the George Floyd riots in America.
Yeah, I can pull it. I don't know if is the audio at the same time, though? That might be a little confusing.
It is. The audio is at the same time. But basically, yeah.
Two-tier
I don't know if that's going to be helpful.
Keir Starmer is a villain name.
Yeah.
We got to... Can I come out with that? That's a villain name.
Go for it. It is. I mean, you would be hard pressed to be more creative than that. Keir Starmer.
So if I give a summary of the two videos, and obviously he's in a different position now, but during the George Floyd riots, a much different message. He quotes Martin Luther King Jr. Injustice Anywhere. It's a threat to justice everywhere. Said that he shocked and angered. He's supporting the protesters, not calling them riots, not calling them violent at all. He said the response of President Trump was really bad. And then you go to the right. The police are making arrests. Individuals will be held on remand. Charges will follow. Not going to tolerate hate in any form. Throwing the book basically at the riots within his own country.
Right.
So
and I think that the important point here is that we're not saying that the rioters over the weekend, the poor working white class rioters, there were a mix of extremist neo-Nazis in there as well. Those themselves, that response is unacceptable. It is immoral. They at one point tried to burn down a hotel that had immigrant families in it. I mean, children, women, obviously complete rejection of that. However, the fact that the media in Great Britain and the prime minister himself and his government are coming out and refusing to acknowledge that they themselves have created the conditions for this kind of violence is totally irresponsible. And it just foments more extremism on both sides, right? Because just like Biden standing up in front of Independence Hall and calling half of Americans far-right, ideologues and Trumpists and MAGA.
I mean,
it's the same thing.
The media in London, of course, is in complete sync with the Labour Party. Just like, like this is what I'm getting at. Like there was this cackle on one of these Sunday morning shows, and all these supposed reporters were talking about Kamala Harris, and I just couldn't help it. Like they were just so glowing how wonderful she was, and it's like we have to get in the mindset. Like these are Democrats, and they were talking about their candidate. They're no different than a press secretary for some congressman on the Hill, and so the same thing is true in Britain. Okay, like the press there. I mean, what actually is unique about London is they actually have conservative newspapers there or whatever. And there's this idea of having both parties having their own press is sort of more of their tradition than it is in the United States. But in the United States, it's just like people just, the media said this. Dude, the media and the Democrats are one and the same. Like we just need to get that in through our thick skulls.
Yeah, I was watching Rachel Scott over at ABC, who now famous for grilling Trump. So she was on the Sunday show, and they were like, Rachel Scott reporting on the Democrat strategy. I'm like, she is the Democrat strategist.
Yeah.
Like, there is as if she was this objective, like, thank you for reporting on that. And she's like, the Democrats should do this. And I'm like, you are. That's you. You're just saying what you want.
Yeah, I mean, a recent example of this. So JD Vance went on a podcast called the Full Send Podcast. Now, if anyone in the live here is around my age, they're probably familiar with the Nelk Boys. They're a really popular YouTube channel. Pranksters, kind of like frat boys would be like another name for them. They interviewed Trump early days, and I'm sure because they have a relationship with Trump, they got JD on there. Now, I saw there was some controversy online about this. I just want to play this. So before I play the clip, I want to show what the takeaway from this was, because it was so funny to me. I'm trying to find it here basically JD Vance was talking about when he got the call from Trump to become the vice president.
Oh, this was classic.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Where is that? I had it.
Cat Ladies had a response to this one.
Cat Ladies had a response. Let me see. I might just pull it up on my Twitter.
This was great.
So basically JD Vance goes on this podcast, and it's very informal, of course, but here's the screen share. So we get a tweet. I asked this genuinely, truly, what is wrong with him? ? So we get from the New York Times. They picked up this podcast, and they say, Senator JD Vance of Ohio, during a podcast that was released on Friday, shared an anecdote about the moment former President Donald J. Trump called to ask him to be his running mate. His 7-year-old son, Vance recalled, wanted to discuss Pokemon. Quote, so he's trying to talk to me about Pikachu, and I'm on the phone with Donald Trump. And I'm like, quote, son, shut the hell up for 30 seconds about Pikachu. He said, referring to the Pokemon mascot. This is the most important call of my life. Please just let me take this phone call. So I was like, okay, so this is just an experience in journalists discovering what it's like to live with kids. Like, have you never been around a 7-year-old? Like, it's basically impossible to get them to talk about anything else. And they will talk about it regardless of the situation that you're in. So I was like, this is already dumb. So I went and found the actual quote, the actual clip of the podcast. And it was the most innocuous, offhand. He's clearly joking. Yeah. He's clearly in the moment. I'm sure he didn't say that exactly. And everyone was just clipping and running with it.
Who cares?
Like, I get it. This is my life.
It actually, poor kid. He's so fragile. He's like a Christmas ornament. He's gonna shatter him forever. He'll never get into Princeton now. Shut the hell up.
So,
oh my gosh.
I actually went and watched the full podcast because, again, shout out to my parents, but my dad did. I was like, why is my dad listening to the full Send podcast? Like, it's totally my demographic. And if anything, hilarious that he's getting these weird charges. He comes off as the most normal dude of all time. I'm like, it's like the opposite, almost like it's the complete opposite of what they're branding him as.
Stereotypical dad. I mean, come on.
And the funny part about that story was he shared that story, and then right after he said, Trump was on the phone. He's like, hey, who is that? He's like, oh, it's my son. He's talking about Pikachu. And Trump's like, oh, put him on speakerphone. And he put him on speakerphone and said, and read the statement that like his dad was going to become the vice president. I was like, and of course, Donald Trump in the true story sounds like hilarious and charming. Like, what a charming thing to do. Like, put a 7-year-old on the call. And he also shared.
He's a dad and a grandpa too.
And he shared another story about, he was asking, Trump said his wife, JD Vance's wife is a little bit shy of the spotlight, doesn't like politics. And so he went to a fundraiser or something, and they're meeting Trump, and he asked like, oh, what do you think about your husband, like becoming the vice president? And she's like, oh, honestly, I'm not like really into politics, and it makes me a little nervous. And Trump just kind of shuts her off and said, my wife hates it too. Like, don't worry about it.
See, that's just so normal. Like, those are normal things to say.
I know.
Yeah, one of the reactions online to the JD Vance, the Pikachu, the guy was like, this is not how you speak to children. You should speak to them with evidence and reason. And as a mother, I'm just thinking, with a 7-year-old, like, and a 5-year-old, sometimes you want to explain to them what's going on as they develop and grow into, but sometimes they just need to be quiet, for heaven's sake. Cause like,
Erica, what do you know? Parenting advice from the New York Times.
I should, or the Atlantic.
Someone might write a hit piece on you, Erica. They're going to take a clip from this podcast and write you up as the worst, meanest mother of all time. But it's just like a small example of, I think, a larger trend. Even they asked him, which of course, like everyone has asked him, like, why'd you flip on Trump, right? In 2016, 2015, called him Hitler. You were very anti-Trump. Like, what do you have to say about that? And I was like, oh, interesting. Like, you have a non-scripted interview in an informal environment where someone has to answer normally. Like, there's no teleprompter. You have to give like a normal answer. Right. And of course, his answer, I thought, was what a normal guy would say. He's like, well, I just went and did the research, and all the things he was accused of, and he gave the Charlottesville example, were not true. And so I was like, oh, wait a second. And then he looked into the Charlottesville thing, good people on both sides, found out that's a hoax. That's been a debunked hoax for years now. He was like, oh,
even
actually,
Snopes said it was debunked.
He said his view of Trump was what the media portrayed him as. And he said he was at a point where he was a little bit too trustful of mainstream media, that they somehow were objective journalists and that they don't have any bias in mind. But upon doing more research, critical thinking, he found out Trump actually, in many of these cases, this is not what he's being described to be. And he said, actually, what I see is his greatest strength is that he doesn't apologize and that he doesn't play the media games. He's going to be him. He's going to say what he wants to say regardless. And I've been getting a little bit of that feeling from Trump recently, which is exciting. It kind of gets me back to that 2016 energy where he ruthlessly stuck to his guns, said what he wanted to say, and unapologetic about how media is going to portray him. And I think JD's kind of stepping into that role now, and we'll have to understand that based on the attacks being so ridiculous. He was even talking about the vetting process of like, what's it like, being vetted to become vice president? And he was talking about how they asked if he had a second family. Like a Secret Service guy sits down like, hey, do you have a second family? He's like, what? Like, yeah, no, some guys have second families in like Alaska. He's like, I do not have a second family in Alaska. Like the vetting process sounds pretty intense.
It's in Idaho.
Yeah. But then also flip on this too. We have veepstakes going on in the other case. Two very interesting things on the Shapiro front. Okay. So, well, one, Philadelphia seemed to leak something suggesting that he might become the pick.
Right,
But
the mayor, yeah.
two other things have been dug up. Now, I want to see if you guys have thoughts on. One, past volunteer service with the IDF.
I think this is a deal breaker, honestly. I don't care. I don't care what country. You volunteer for the army of another country. I'm not saying you can't be a governor or even a senator. You should not be the president or vice president of the United States, period. And that's it. I don't care. Deal breaker.
Well, Josh,
done.
funny enough, that's not the reason I think people wouldn't vote for him on the left. Unfortunately, they wouldn't
the
vote
left
for
doesn't
him.
like it because they think he might have shot at Palestinians being in the Israeli army.
Well,
Yes.
he wrote an op-ed while he was doing it, saying that Palestinians are too battle-minded to pursue peace with Israel. They've really done their best to try to whitewash this, to back away from
Probably
it.
true, though.
I know, but we're talking about the progressive base of the party that basically represents the Middle East.
Yeah, I think that what came out over the weekend on him might be enough to knock him off the top. And Philadelphia mayor is going to have to redo her ad.
We'll see. I mean, the fact that you're right, Tom. They don't have a problem with him just joining any country's.
No, that's not the
military.
problem.
It was that it was Israel's.
Right.
Also,
And then there was the other story that came to light where apparently there was a sexual harassment suit for someone on his staff, and he covered it up.
Josh, I'm not even talking about that. Did you see the real dark hole his time as the attorney general in Pennsylvania story?
I'm
Oh
not
boy,
sure.
I got a story for you. So, basically, to give a summary, he was the attorney general when a case was reopened about someone named Ellen Greenberg. She had a really strange death where she was stabbed 30 times.
Yes.
And they ruled it a suicide, which I literally do not think it's physically possible to be stabbed 30 times by yourself. And so the parents have been continuing to push for justice. And so new data, I'm sorry, I'm not a true crime guy. New information came to light that caused them to reopen this case while Josh Shapiro was the attorney general. And first off, here's a diagram of where she was stabbed.
Oh my gosh.
Now, there's no way. This is just
That's not
completely
suicide.
impossible
Not
for this to be
Not be
suicide.
suicide.
So, interestingly, the fiance of Ellen called a well-known attorney in Pennsylvania before he called the police. Stuff was suspect about while he was there. Now, the family's not even accusing him, but the lawyer that covered it up and made sure it was ruled a suicide donated to the Shapiro campaign. So they're super tight. When this was re-upped, Shapiro basically ruled it a suicide again, swept it back under the rug. So this is now coming to bear as well.
That's
So
bad.
that's weird.
All the opposition material coming out against him.
I would say that's a little weird.
It's probably coming from other candidates that want to be the running mate.
No doubt.
Oh my gosh.
Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who's in the running. Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, who's in the running. Some of these guys are probably just getting this information because everyone has these files, and just dump it out there. You know what, though? People say, I don't like that part of, the mudslinging. It's like, you know what? Honestly, you say you don't, but then again, you wouldn't want someone like this in office and saying, I had no idea. So
It's part of the vetting process.
Vetting
some of this
process,
stuff
yeah.
to come to light. I have to say, it's not the ideal, but.
And then, if we're really getting down in the mud here, we have the first gentleman, Doug Emhoff, admitting to cheating on his first wife with the nanny that was a teacher at his daughter's school and also the nanny.
Well,
and then
no wonder the Biden-Harris is such a wonderful ticket because Joe Biden did that too. Jill is the nanny of his boys. That's who he cheated on with. Yeah, you didn't know that?
dude, what?
Joe Biden was the nanny for his children.
It's a
and
feature,
she was
not a
married to
bug.
somebody else. And so Joe's like, hey, come on. And they became an item. Like
I did not know that.
Yeah, no, this is not even old news. Yeah.
Real old. So the Doug Emhoff thing doesn't look great, I have to say.
No.
It doesn't, but I don't think it's like, it's going to be a day or two and it's under the
A
rug.
flash in the pan.
She's not running for office.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't
like
think
Melania doing nude pics. It's like, okay, yeah, but she's not running.
Right.
So
yeah, and I think that Harris's core constituency doesn't care, honestly.
No, definitely not.
I don't think they care. I think they're just like, this is what people do, right? And that's disturbing too. I mean, Ben Franklin was right. You got to have the moral. America will last as long as the voters are moral people, and I think we're past that, especially in that voting block.
Yeah, Josh, don't you always talk about, though, like for scandals to stick, they need to be easily understood? But this would be like, for Kamala would need a scandal easily understood rather than First Gentleman or whatever.
Well, again, it's a question of the different scandals. Okay, so like I would say this, in the 1970s, no one would have ever thought it possible to have a first lady that would ever had done nude modeling. Okay, it would just like, no way, it's over. Well, then 40 years later, people are like, okay, yeah, I'm whatever. It's not the end of the world. It's not okay, but whatever, moving on. And again, like a scandal like this 40, 50 years ago might have been a deal breaker. It's like, wait, you had an affair with somebody else, and apparently, they didn't keep the child. What does that mean? Was the child aborted?
Possible. They didn't
be the case.
They didn't actually report in the Daily Mail report. They didn't have whether or not it was or was adopted or whatever. But yeah.
But again, people can brush it off and say, okay, so that was something he did with his first wife before he even married Kamala. So people are like, I'm not going to not vote for her because of something sinful her husband did before she even married. It's like it gets a little tricky. Yeah. So,
although didn't she get her political start off of basically a sex scandal?
That
I hear you.
So, yeah.
But again, part of this is that Donald Trump has a lot of sex scandals himself.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's like it's hard to throw darts when people like.
Very true.
Hello, you're throwing rocks in a glass house. So
it does feel like morality is kind of just it's lost its premium on people are almost so desensitized to it in politics.
I think part of it is that we have an entire nation awash in pornography. I mean, like, how do you not like? I mean, it's a sewage. It's just everywhere.
Yeah,
and it's rotten and it smells and it's bad. So like, it's how does it not affect people?
Right. But if you live in it, you stop smelling it after a while. Mm-hmm. That's probably the point. Okay, we got to slide Twilight Zone now. Erica, you are up first.
All right. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. This was a really cool story over the weekend. It was in Weekend Loop, and this is AP reports. I love that the AP was forced to report this. The AP reports a nationwide expansion of pro-life maternity homes since Roe. So these are cool numbers. Right now, the Maternity Housing Coalition Director, Valerie Harkins, reports that she oversees 195 maternity homes. That's a 23% growth since the fall of Roe in Roe v. Wade. And these are maternity homes where women who find themselves pregnant, some of them take women and multiple children as they await the birth of their child. Most of these centers, the woman can live there up to 2 years after the birth of the baby. Wow. And they help her finish her degree. They help her with childcare while she works to get her feet under her. These are amazing organizations, and most of them are faith-based. So they're Christian, they're Catholic. So I'm sorry, that was the wrong number. So they've grown 195 maternity homes. Now there are 450 total in the country. So that's the actual number. And, to everyone who has endured taunts of, oh, you're pro-life, you only care about babies before they're born, you can point to this. There was a tweet, it was like, Planned Parenthood maternity homes, 0. Faith-based maternity homes, 450. And you're just that's it, guys. That's it. So there are 2 reasons I'm still on Facebook. I hate Facebook right now. The algorithms are terrible. They're awful. But there are 2 reasons I'm still on there. One is Peter Wolfgang, because he's awesome. Shout out to Peter.
Shout out Pete.
And the other is this Facebook page called the St. Mary's Shelter, Virginia. And it's my favorite maternity home page because they post almost every day these stories of these girls and women who have gotten on their feet. The girls come back and tell their own story. And it's just it's good to see the good things that are being done in our country, especially when our head is in the sewer so often reporting on it.
Yeah.
This is great news. So shout out to the maternity homes. And of course, in the AP story, the reporter had to bring up maternity homes have a fraught history of trauma. So you'll hear about like the Irish maternity homes, and they would like rip the babies away from the girls as soon as they were born. So you hear all that in the story as well. But just to point out that those maternity homes were largely run by the state. And it was a very different thing to have, you know, this sort of welfare system that you dump these girls into versus a faith-based home where I know, imagine that.
Christian charity is better than government-based assistance.
Just another point to be made by the story.
Maybe we should tell the USCCB that.
Yeah. Question for anyone in the chat too, or anyone listening. I feel like I've gotten way more Planned Parenthood ads as of recent on YouTube. Like I'm a YouTube guy. I'm on YouTube all the time. And it's like these what do they call them? Because you can't call them pro-life. You have to, anti-choice extremists is I think the new buzzword. These anti-choice extremists are trying to elect Donald Trump to do Project 2025, which of course all is like super debunked and whatever. But I've just been getting whacked by those recently. And
well, men watch YouTube a lot, and Planned Parenthood wants to convince men, hey, you like the free gravy train of having sex, you got to be pro-abortion.
Well, did you see the Doug Emhoff tweet that people kept pulling up?
Doug Emhoff loves abortion.
Yeah, I remember when Kamala Harris called to tell me about the Supreme Court's decision on Dobbs. The first thing I thought about was my daughter. As a dad and as a husband, I'm going to do everything I can to speak out and help advance reproductive freedom. Ooh, doesn't look too good after that information came out.
First thing I think about when my daughter is pregnant is how can I kill my grandchild? That's
tough.
Yeah, sick.
That's gross.
That's toxic masculinity, Doug.
That's
what that sounds like.
I'm not sure if this is still going on, but I would like to give a shout out. I had a family member involved. I don't know how public he wants his involvement to be. He's just a really humble guy. But Mary's Mantle, Detroit area, was like an OG maternity home for women escaping bad situations or didn't have money and were having a child. So big shout out to Mary's Mantle. That stuff has been going on for a long time, but I'm happy to see that exploding because I can't think of like a worse situation to be in, you know, pregnant, feeling pressure from everywhere, not knowing where to go. It's hard enough to be pregnant, period.
As you know, Tom.
Yeah, I know personally. I do have the Apple emoji pregnant man. I send that around every once in a while.
I mean, women are heroes for being pregnant. Yeah, we hear that all the time. But how about the men have to deal with the pregnant women? I mean, come on.
Okay, Josh.
I can't believe
we're keeping it moving. We're keeping it moving. That's not what we're talking about at all.
Unbearable.
Next to the Twilight Zone,
right,
Josh, before I knock you into the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, we might remove you again from this live stream.
So just, I couldn't help but share this with Twilight Zone. It's funny. The people who support Biden Harris, now they cover up the painter's tape over at Biden. So it's just Harris because we got rid of that guy.
I like the full job.
They just cut the sign in half. It's just Harris. So the economy is so bad they can't even buy new signs. They got to reuse their old ones. That's Bidenomics for you right there.
I saw. Well, first off, we got 100 people live in the chat right now. I think that's a record. Sick.
Hey, chat.
Second, I saw a new sign. I think it was dictator or democracy, and dictator was in red, democracy was in blue. So that's a new one I saw. And then I was driving by this. It was like the loudest Trump display I've ever seen in residential property. It was like a neon sign. It said, "It was all just a dream," and a huge head of Donald Trump on a tree house. And in the garage, everything neon, Trump everywhere. I was like, this is commitment to
It's like
to
craptacular.
That's voter enthusiasm.
That is
there.
enthusiasm. Yeah. I mean, it's better than this, better than cutting your sign in half because you have a new anti-democratic ticket job.
My kids actually passed a Donald Trump parade this weekend in New Haven. Like there was a line of trucks going through New Haven, Connecticut, deep blue. And on their way back from Mass, they saw a Trump parade. I was like, in New Haven? This is new.
Was it the Patriot Front? Or were they trying to probably some feds trying to get people? Stupid. All right, well, mine's a pretty fun Twilight Zone. So Nancy Pelosi suggested a revision to Mount Rushmore is basically all I have to say about this. Is this going to be too long? Let's see. We'll play it. Always love hearing from Pelosi. No use in saying good morning because it isn't one.
The United States, a Mount Rushmore kind of president of the United States. Want to know what comes next?
That he belongs up there on Mount Rushmore. Lincoln and Joe Biden.
But you got Teddy Roosevelt up there, and he's wonderful. I don't say take him down, but you can add Biden. We had big needs.
Oh my! Even Leslie Stahl is like
She even was like,
You know what they
"Gosh."
should do? You know, if you ever been to Mount Rushmore, there's that mountain, and then like off into the side, they should have a statue of Biden like wandering off like he's going the wrong way.
I did see someone did a great edit job, Photoshop job, and they had Mount Rushmore, but they had Biden's head backwards. Like he was like, it was the back of his head. I do love, Erica, you pointed out the obvious. It was like, even the interviewer was like, really? You're suggesting it? And this is my thing. I watched that and I'm like, Nancy Pelosi genuinely does not believe a word that she says. It was so obvious in this that she didn't even believe that. The only time you actually hear her say something she believes in is like if a hot mic is released, like behind closed doors is the only time you hear something genuine from her. That's it. I bet, you know what? And if we would have followed her trading advice, if we would have followed Paul Pelosi's stock portfolio, we all wouldn't be in this problem right now. I'm sure they sold off whatever. I'm sure they're doing just fine.
You can do that though.
I know.
There is a stock fund where it's called Nance.
I know.
And you can just invest in the stocks that she buys.
Yeah, and I'm going to be rich.
Yeah.
So
maybe you will be able to get that house, Tom.
That's right. I'm getting a house with that Pelosi, that dirty Pelosi money in the stock market. It's not looking great right now. But fun Monday show. We made it through. It was sketchy at times. My camera stayed on because I just moved to webcam. Erica was a little delayed at times, and Josh just completely dropped out. But we're still here. And people have been like, Tom, get someone to come bless your stuff. We have. I've had a priest come to the office, literally sprinkle all my stuff with holy water, bless the entire office. So maybe we need to come again. I don't know. I'm trying my best here. I'm calling Sony support after this. But fun show. Thank you guys for joining. Man, we got 102 in the chat right now, which is insane. We keep growing. If you want people to come out, hang out, have a good time with us, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Eastern time is where you can do so. Thank you to everyone that listens to the podcast. We obviously don't forget about you guys. Leave us a review if you feel inclined. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Thank you for the emails. I got a whole bunch I got to get to here. But yeah, I totally, we just hit 1 million downloads. I think we've talked about that. It's really caused me to reflect and just be super grateful for all the people that listen, the community of so many people that just email in saying, we're praying for you. We support you. And that just means a lot. The whole reason we can do this, or the reason we do this is for you guys. So if you guys want to support us, the best way to do that is to join the Champions Club. Become a monthly supporter. Shout out to all our champions that support us right now. Couldn't do any of this without you. Thank you for that. Links will be in the description. And pray for us. St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and St.